With the war in Israel that just kicked off last weekend, with the invasion by Hamas, a radical terrorist group fighting for Palestine, and Israel's response to that attack, countless horrors happened and continue to do so every day. On top of the warfare, there was also a series of earthquakes last weekend. I know one in particular that was really huge in Afghanistan. Because of all these things happening together, many types of Christians are wondering whether or not the rapture is impending. Last Sunday, I searched Rapture on YouTube, and a countless amount of videos had already been made reflecting on what was going on in the Middle East and how that points to the rapture. Hi, I'm Andy, and my pronouns are they, them. Welcome to Assigned Christian at Birth. If you're in the middle of deconstructing, or even if you've deconstructed years ago, I, of all people, can completely understand the alarm and panic signals your brain may be sending you in this moment. Even though we've made it out or are on our way out of evangelical fundamentalism, we still live with brains that were baked in end times indoctrination. First of all, if you haven't watched last week's Morning Thoughts episode yet, I encourage you to do so. That video will show you all about how rapture theology was developed. After that, be sure to follow and hit the notification bell to come back both this Sunday and next for a more deep dive into the development of this theology and how it's pervaded American culture over the last 150 years. As someone raised in evangelical fundamentalism in the late 80s, the 90s, and the early 2000s, I was baked in end times theology, especially of the left behind nature. My mom taught me to read when I was 2 years old, and because of that, I started reaching for books on my parents' bookshelves much younger than most kids would think to. This is how I came into contact with Frank Peretti's terrifying Christian supernatural horror novels, and also the first book in the Left Behind series. If you aren't familiar with the series, it was written by Pastor Tim LaHaye, yes, that Tim LaHaye, and Jerry B. Jenkins, an actual writer. While the books were sold as fiction, evangelical culture and the community I was raised in embraced these books as if they were a factual sequel to the Book of Revelation, going deeper and explaining more specifically about what to expect during the end times that were surely around the corner. During my most formative years, 1st grade through 8th grade, I attended Calvary Community Church with my family. It was a non-denominational, evangelical, fundamentalist church. Don't forget my definition of this specific type of church. Baptists, whose desire to do whatever they want is far greater than staying beholden to traditional denominational oversight. Being raised in that church settled me with some serious religious trauma, but we don't have time to go into every aspect of that today. All you need to know is that attending that church and being made to sit through the regular adult service every Sunday morning after already having attended my Sunday school class and reading Left Behind indoctrinated me to the point that when I was a child, all the way through my adolescence and into my young adulthood, I knew for a fact that I was never going to die. At church, the pastor talked about how we're living in the end times and that Jesus was going to return at any time, and how lucky were we that we weren't going to have to die. At home, my mom refused to join the new Fry's grocery store club card program and started shopping at Albertsons instead, at least until they also came out with a club card. When I asked her why she was so dead set against something that would offer savings, she told me that the barcode would allow the store to track her purchases, and that the mark of the beast had to do with barcodes that could track us, and she wanted nothing to do with it. I mean, she didn't say just in case, but it seemed like just in case. Obviously, well, I mean, maybe not obviously, the particular brand of theology I was raised in was that once you get the mark of the beast, there's no coming back from that. You're going to hell for sure. Nothing can save you. So I guess I can see why that freaked her out if that's what she believed. But anyway, moving on. My brainwashing by this belief system was so thorough that I did not have the conscious realization that I was going to die someday until I was 24 years old. When I was a junior at a private Calvinist high school, 9/11 happened. As someone who lived in a home with extremely regulated and limited TV and no newspaper delivered to the house, I experienced the terrorist attacks secondhand through my classmates. The main thing I remember about that day is showing up to my homeroom AP US history class, and all the popular girls were huddled in the corner talking about how sad they were that they were going to be raptured before they had the chance to get married and experience sex. It was during these years that I also found the rest of the Left Behind series that had been written up until that point in our school library. And as a good evangelical fundamentalist high schooler, I devoured them. One unfortunate side effect of reading those was the resurgence of one of my deepest childhood fears, that I would one day become the person who would give birth to the Antichrist. It's a little funny to laugh at now, but poor traumatized little me was certain that because I had spent my younger years in Europe, that qualified me because, we were taught that the Antichrist was going to come from Europe. Speaking of whom, let's talk about that and a handful of the major political figures who have been speculated to be the Antichrist by fundamentalists the world over throughout the ages. Let's get into it. The concept of the Antichrist, we all know this. It's a figure who opposes and seeks to replace Christ in Christian eschatology, or the study of the end times. And this study has led to numerous speculations about who this figure might be throughout history. These speculations are typically rooted in fundamentalist beliefs and supposed interpretations of prophetic biblical texts. Here are some famous figures who have been speculated to be the Antichrist. Nero, the Roman emperor, was one of the earliest individuals to be associated with the idea of the Antichrist. Some early Christians believe that he was the embodiment of evil and persecution due to his harsh treatment of Christians. When you look at Revelation during the time in which it was written, this makes sense. We know now that Revelation was written as an apocalyptic piece of literature that was a metaphor for what was going on in that day. If I had to agree with any one of these, I would say Nero as the Antichrist is probably the closest we're ever going to get. However, we know he wasn't really the Antichrist because none of the rest of the end time stuff has happened yet. Not that it's going to. During his rise to power and conquest in Europe, Napoleon was also considered by some to be a candidate for the Antichrist. His expansionist ambitions and control over most of Europe is what fueled these speculations. Hitler's actions during World War II and the Holocaust led some to view him as an Antichrist figure. These claims often arise during times of conflict or political turmoil, and that was definitely some serious turmoil. Franklin D. Roosevelt was even thought to be the Antichrist at one point. His efforts to expand the power of the federal government with the New Deal and his inclination toward internationalism appeared to parallel the end times fears of these fundamentalists about the rise of the totalitarian state and a world ruled by a Satan-inspired dictator. Troubled by what they were witnessing at home and abroad, white conservative Christians began to view this president and his administration not as God's emissaries on earth, but as tools of the devil. Yeah, of course, somebody who implemented the New Deal is the devil. Parallels to today, right? Oh my gosh. In the lead up to the Gulf War, some Christian groups speculated that Saddam Hussein might be the Antichrist because of his actions in the Middle East and conflicts with Western powers. A lot of you might remember this, that during the presidency of Barack Obama, he faced speculation and conspiracy theories suggesting that he might be the Antichrist, often fueled by his political opponents and misinformation campaigns. Throughout the ages, multiple generations of Christians believed that they could point to signs of the end times and that they were just around the corner. When you hear people claiming to have certain signs of the times today, just remember how many times their ancestors claimed the same thing. Many have interpreted natural disasters such as earthquakes, hurricanes, floods, wildfires as signs of impending doom. These events are often seen as punishments from God or harbingers of the apocalypse. Let's not forget when Franklin Graham, son of America's pastor Billy Graham, suggested that Hurricane Katrina was punishment sent from God for New Orleans orgies. Changes in societal values and perceived moral decay have long been cited as signs of the end times. Major wars and conflicts have also frequently been seen as signs of the end times. The idea of a global war leading to the end of the world has long been seen as a reoccurring theme in apocalyptic thinking. This type of thinking popped up during World War I, World War II, Vietnam, and the Gulf War. Throughout history, outbreaks of deadly diseases like the Black Death in the Middle Ages and the Spanish flu in 1918, also more recent pandemics, HIV/AIDS, and COVID-19, have all been viewed by some as signs of the end times. Political turmoil, revolutions, and the rise of oppressive regimes have often been interpreted as the signs of an impending apocalypse, particularly by those who believe in a specific timeline of events leading to the end of the world. Believers typically claim that these beliefs are based on biblical prophecy found in the books of Daniel, Ezra, and the book of Revelation. But don't forget, multiple generations of people have claimed to find these signs of these prophecies in their own era. Unusual celestial events such as comets, eclipses, or meteor showers have been interpreted through the ages as omens or signs of divine judgment. In more recent times, the advancement of technology and the development of powerful weapons have raised concerns about the potential for human-made apocalyptic events, such as nuclear warfare or the misuse of AI. Similarly, economic downturns, financial crises, and collapses of economic systems have also been viewed as the sign of the impending apocalypse. Now let's talk about some of the times the rapture has been predicted and then never came to pass. Many individuals and groups have attempted to predict the date of the rapture based on supposedly biblical prophecy, but these predictions have consistently failed to come true. While there are many of these throughout history, I'll highlight 4 notable instances. The Millerite movement, led by William Miller, a Baptist preacher, and his followers, believed that the second coming of Christ would happen on October 22nd, 1844. This event is known as the Great Disappointment, which cracks me up because obviously it didn't happen as predicted. After that failed prophecy, many of the Millerites experienced profound disillusionment, and a group of them then went on to form the Seventh-day Adventist Church. Because predicting the rapture continued to be an element of some branches of Christian fundamentalism, Harold Camping, a Christian radio broadcaster, made multiple predictions about the rapture 167 years after William Miller's rapture fail. Camping's most famous prediction was for May 21st, 2011, followed by October 21st, 2011, when it didn't come to pass in May. Obviously, those predictions failed, and Camping's credibility went down the tubes. But let's go back to some of those in-between years, the 1980s. The 80s were ripe for end times prophecy. There was so much going on in the Middle East, in the Soviet Union. Speculation was just everywhere. Both Edgar C. Whisenant, a former NASA engineer, and Hal Lindsey, a Sunday school teacher who formerly worked for Campus Crusade for Christ, both published books about why the rapture would occur in 1988. Kinda wish it did. Whisenant's lesser-known book was titled 88 Reasons Why the Rapture Will Occur in 1988. When this prediction did not come to pass, he revised his calculations and predicted it for 1989. Obviously, that didn't pan out either. In contrast, Lindsay's book, The Late Great Planet Earth, became a national nonfiction bestseller, second only in sales to the Bible when it came to Christian literature. It then went on to become a 1978 film narrated by Orson Welles, and it became firmly entrenched in the fundamentalist Christian zeitgeist of the 1980s. I have so much to say about The Late Great Planet Earth and Hal Lindsey's theology. So much so, in fact, that the next 2 weeks of my Morning Thoughts podcast are going to be about it. Please tune in to the next 2 Sundays at 12 p.m. Pacific to hear the history behind Lindsey's brand of dispensationalism and end times theology, and more truths about the man who invented the concept of the rapture itself. If you want to get ahead of the class, go ahead and watch my Morning Thoughts from last week, which is a primer on the subject and a great introduction. If you learned something today, please smash that like button. It really helps me get this video out to people who need to see it. I hope you have a wonderful weekend. Bye!